Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Honorable Christie, and good morning, honorable members.
Morning, Chairperson.
Good morning, honorable members, and good morning to you, Mnumaqosa, and colleagues. Can we start with our meeting for today? Thank you very much, honorable members, and this is the agenda for today, and hoping that we'll conclude this meeting 12 or at 12:30. That's the items for today. Once more, good morning, honorable members. Nomaqosa, you are all welcome, honorable members, to this portfolio committee meeting today with the unit from the presidency and obvious adopting and considering our Gauteng oversight report. Nomaqosa, I will then request that the apologies.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members and colleagues. Chairperson, I received 3 apologies, one from Honorable Trollip, another one from Minister Tsaveni, and another one from Minister Ramakgopa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Nomaqosa. Honorable members, those are the apologies, but also in addition, there's an outstanding apology of Honorable Apiri. And also the apology that you know of our portfolio committee secretary, Mandy Bali. So, honorable members, we are moving to the next item, the adoption of the agenda. Honorable Dunjwa.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members, and good morning to the team from the presidency. I, Lindelwa Dunjwa, from the African National Congress, move for the adoption of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
The agenda has been adopted. Any second, honorable members?
Thank you, Chair. I second the agenda. The move to adopt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkumbanga. Honorable members, the today's session is dedicated to listen to the presentation from the SEAS, which is the Socio-Economic Impact Assessment Unit in the President. And this body plays a vital role in evaluating the broader developmental, economic, and social implications of legislative and policy decisions. And honorable
Recording in
members,
progress.
today we are looking forward to your insights and reflection in this bill aligns with the national development and transformation agenda, the fiscal prudence, and for effective state capabilities. And honorable members will know that the decision of this portfolio committee was to invite all relevant institutions to the analysis and obvious their views and their recommendations to this portfolio committee. We've started with the first institution, which is NETLEC. Now we've got a institution, which is the Socio-Economic Impact Assessment Unit, and we'll also listen to the Treasury. So today, honorable members, is to note the inputs by this unit and obvious take the recommendations and prepare ourselves for the day when we start with the deliberations, which is the motion of desirability by this portfolio committee. And with those few words, I don't see the Deputy Minister here. I will then hand over to the leader of the delegation from the Socio-Economic Impact Assessment Unit. I see your hand, Honorable Dunjo.
Sorry, Chair, it's a legacy hand. Sorry. Sorry, members, it's an old hand. Sorry, Chair. I've lowered it.
Thank you very much, honorable members. With those few words, I'm handing over to the leader of the delegation because I don't see the Deputy Minister in the platform.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members of Parliament and colleagues. My name is Pulani Kule. My name is Pulani Kule from the Presidency Policy and Research Services, and we are also responsible for the Socio-Economic Impact Assessment. I've been joined by my colleagues, Ms. Gaino McMaster and Mr. Farelo Majuda in this meeting. And thank you very much for inviting us to come and share the socio-economic impact analysis of the National States Enterprises Bill. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes, you can proceed, Mr. Pulan, Ms. Pulan.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Or are you presenting?
Yes, I'll be presenting as well.
Proceed.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Chair. So the presentation, as indicated, will look into the socio-economic impact analysis of the National State Enterprises Bill. The presentation covers giving a background on what the socio-economic impact assessment system is all about, the context around the National State Enterprises Bill, the socio-economic impact analysis report that was done by the former Department of Public Enterprises, and our own independent analysis with regards to the report as well as the bill and the recommendations that we are putting forth. Just to give a background to honorable members, the socio-economic impact assessment system, or SEAS, is an ex-ante policy analysis tool aimed to strengthen policy and lawmaking. So it's a system or a tool that we use when departments are initiating policies, bills, and regulations. It asks certain thought-provoking questions with regard to policies and bills that are being developed. And it also assists in guiding ministries whether to regulate or not, because not every challenge or opportunities that come through has to be, we need to actually come with a new rule or new policy. Others, it's around more of improving implementation mechanisms as opposed to coming with a new policy or new bill whenever we are confronted with socio-economic challenges. So this is the system that was introduced by Cabinet in 2015 to replace the regulatory impact assessment. And the Cabinet further approved the implementation date of 1st October 2015, so that every policy, every bill or regulations that are being initiated by ministries have to be subjected to the socio-economic impact assessment. So from Policy and Research Services, we do analysis of CS reports that are developed by departments. We provide feedback for them to include recommendations as part of improving their policies and bills before they are being adopted for implementation. So in terms of its application, there are two processes. We have the initial impact assessment and the final impact assessment. So the initial impact assessment is linked to the research of the problems that are being identified that require government attention. So it asks research questions to say, what is the problem, the socio-economic problem that you are trying to address? What are the root causes, and how is this problem affecting the vulnerable groups of the society? How is this problem affecting the national priorities, and what are the policy options that we are proposing to address those challenges? And also to say, what are those other existing interventions that are happening so that you don't duplicate what is already existing, but to assess why maybe those interventions are failing to address identified challenges. And then the final impact assessment looks into the option or the alternative, policy alternative that is being identified as a better solution to address those identified challenges. So the CS is applied to policies, bills, and regulations, but we have expanded it to also look into some of the key strategies of government, your master plans and other programs. So as I indicated, we don't produce CS reports, but we do analysis, we do our own independent recommendations to department, and we also do quality assurance and issue certificates. So departments analyze broader socio-economic challenges, what will be the cost of implementing a particular policy or bill, what are the potential risks for, because when we introduce a new rule, you are bound to experience risks, and to say how do you address those before a policy or a bill is being finalized, so that you anticipate and don't get surprises during implementation. But also it allows departments to look at macro issues, how this particular policy or bill will contribute to the national priorities and the national development plan, and also how the implementation will be monitored, will be evaluated. How are we going to determine whether a policy or a bill is making inroads, particularly in addressing the triple challenges? So with regard to the report that was developed by colleagues from the former Department of Public Enterprises, they've identified the problem statement or that made them to come up with this bill, looking at the governance, decline in governance of SOEs, and not optimally contributing to countries' development, and also issues of financial sustainability and situations where some of the SOEs will approach Treasury for the bailouts. So the bill actually set out a rationale and foundation for adoption of a centralized shareholder model for the ownership or housing of strategic SOEs, but also to channel that the SOEs are focused on the developmental agenda of this country, and also to corporate governance and to create flexible organization which can compete as SOE, but also insulated from politics. So the focus areas of this bill is to establish state asset management, SOC Limited as a holding company, clarify powers and functions and institutional arrangements, as well as accountability mechanisms, and transfer of shareholding of selected commercial state enterprises. According to the bill, there are about 13 of those that have potential to be transferred, but also the development and implementation of the national strategy for the SOEs. So the expected outcomes, if the bill gets assented into law, gets implemented, the overall outcomes that we anticipate is to see improvement in governance of SOEs that are being depoliticized, and we expect them to be competitive, profitable, but also in the context of the government priority of building a capable, ethical, and developmental state, but also contributing to economic growth, addressing spatial inequalities, and creation of jobs. So in terms of our analysis also is that the socio-economic problem that this bill tries to address is more to look into strengthening the governance, the viability and competitiveness. And also there's been also issues around lack of clear developmental strategy of the SOEs in line with the national priorities. But also to come up with a model that will allow inter-learning, inter-cooperation towards the bigger developmental goal. So the benefits of the bill will allow for better coordination of state approach to key identified SOEs, professionalized institutions with appropriate skills, and professionalized SOEs, including governance issues and financial sustainability, but also contribution to the national priorities. The report also identified potential risk and mitigation strategies, issues around probably slow development and finalization of the holding company. And also, as you consolidate, there are some of SOEs that are not financially viable, and how do you address issues of rehabilitation as you consolidate? So the report also from the former public enterprises have actually identified some costs of implementing the bill, which will be more of startup costs for the first 3 years of operations to ensure that the holding company is operational. So through the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, there's been engagement with National Treasury on some funding, but there are some anticipation that the company beyond 3 years will start funding itself, its operations through the dividends. And I'm happy, Chair, that National Treasury also will be is being invited to share their insights with regard to this bill. So in terms of our analysis from the presidency is that there's been some iterations with regard to the restructuring of the SOEs. If you look at government reviews towards 10-year, 15, 20, up to 30, there's been some consistency that that SOEs needs to be restructured so that they are viable and they are able to contribute to the priorities of this country. If also you look into the National Development Plan in the context of building a capable, ethical, and developmental state, the NDP has also articulated clear governance structures, stable leadership, and to enable SOEs to achieve their developmental potential. Even in the previous administration, sixth administration, the president has been very consistent around the restructuring of SOEs and rationalization of them. And also there have been recommendations that are coming from the PSEC report around the establishment of a holding company. And if you look at Auditor General reports, there have been concerns around fruitless and wasteful expenditures, late or non-submissions of audits by some of the SOEs. And if you also look at the SIU reports, there have been recoveries that have been made and mostly relating to unlawful and irregular award of tenders. And also, if you look into the Financial and Fiscal Commission report for 2025-26, they've made some of the example in terms of how the rail transport sector has affected other sectors, like the report from Mineral Council of South Africa that estimated a loss of 50 billion by bulk commodity exporters due to the inefficiencies in Transnet, the infrastructure challenges in terms of our rail networks, but also other external factors like the vandalism of our infrastructure and the like. And also from the commuter side, where some of our rail networks were affected and our people were spending more in terms of alternative public transport. There's been some also studies that looked into SOEs, and there's been also a report by the OECD around the ownership and governance of SOEs. So there's been so the study surveyed about 52 jurisdictions, and they found that 60% of these countries were inclined to a centralized state ownership function. So in a centralized ownership model, a single decision-making entity assumes the role of the shareholder for all companies and organizations controlled or owned directly or indirectly by the state. And in Latin America countries, research has shown that establishment of central monitoring agencies reduce both cash flow and contingent liability risk in SOEs. And it shows that these agencies work towards reducing performance uncertainties and exhibit a better understanding of liability levels of the SOEs they provide an oversight role. So various studies also show that good governance is critical to the performance and viability of SOEs and attributed to the country's stance of tackling fraud and corruption. So SOEs can optimally achieve their developmental role, and there is a need to strengthen the link between SOEs and public developmental goals, improve incentives, and enhance governance. So the bill also proposes the development and implementation of an SOE strategy that is linked to the national priorities. But also performance of SOEs is also dependent on the overall state capacity of building a developmental state that is meticulous in planning and implementation of developmental agenda. So if you look at Asian countries, they've been very intentional in terms of planning and implementation. And also it's not surprising that even their SOEs are performing better. So at the heart of planning, SOEs should focus in investing in economic and job opportunities, and also the links with SMMEs, and have efficient infrastructure that will address spatial inequalities, but also in terms of efficient goods and services that will benefit the entire society. But it's also important that as government, it's not only about institutional arrangements and financial support, but also remove regulatory barriers so that they can be able to thrive. So our view is that the bill itself and development of holding company will not be sufficient to depoliticize and make SOEs or state-owned companies to be competitive. So alongside these legislative proposals, DPME should invest in the organizational culture change program. So it's all about people, processes, and systems. So it's about also for DPME to consider appointing relevant experts and administrators for the management of transitions and transfer to a holding company. So the bill needs to be complemented by other strategic interventions to manage transitions, but also organizational culture is very important to the existing staff. And there should be a clear and strategic short to long-term roadmap on transitions. What are those steps that will help us to have a holding company that is efficient, that is self-sustainable, but also contributing to the national priorities? So it's not going to be an overnight process, but it has to be clearly mapped out in a roadmap, and with all the activities that are logically logically sequenced. So in line with the framework on professionalization of the public sector, recruitment of personnel and appointment of board should be based on merit and integrity. And the holding company should have skills, strategy, streamlined processes, investment in technology, and efficient accountability mechanism. And the National School of Government has actually started some trainings to board members, and I think DPME also should tap into these interventions as we professionalize the state-owned enterprises. So, Chair and honorable members of Parliament, this is the presentation on SEAS. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
No, thank you very much, Pulani, and with the detailed presentation of SEAS. Honorable members, that's the presentation from the unit in the Presidency. And then I will take hands, honorable members, for clarities, comments. I'm taking hands, honorable members. I will start with Honorable Dunjwa, followed by Honorable Christie, followed by Honorable Buthelezi, there's Honorable Montana, Honorable Matiwane, Honorable Bergman.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation that has been shared to us by the Presidency, which is quite a very important presentation as we are moving forward with the bill. It's very profound in terms of the socio-economic impact assessment. And the first question, Chair, that I would like to put is a proposal so that I don't lose it. A proposal that is in page 7 that talks about the FFC Commission. I want to put to the committee that we then should invite this FFC Commission so that we are able to gather lots of information as we are moving forward. The second issue, Chair, is that I'm quite happy that in fact this presentation is putting across a very important factor in us moving forward, because we are to learn from the previous experiences and why we are to have a holding company that it talks about the issue of professionalization and the recruitment of people with skills. That is very important to have that. But secondly, Chair, the question from me is that how then are we going to be able how is the holding company going to be able to balance the issue of that commercialization and that they are the holdings, to ensure that the SOEs are playing their role in terms of the developmental responsibility, which is that very important in terms of in page 6. My question is not to that. What measures will be put in place to ensure that the holding company can be self-sufficient? And are the SOEs currently producing adequate profits to enable the sustainability funding of the holding company? By the subsidies after the 3 years of allocation of funds? And also, Chair, what measures will be taken in the instant within the subsidy SOEs do not generate the required profit to finance the functioning of the holding company? And to what extent should the state capitalizing COEs, and what aspects of the bill will make provision for the duties of the state in relation to the financial sustainability of the SOEs, to always be going consent to play their developmental and commercial a commercial mandate. So it's two. It's commercial mandate is their developmental, and how then the holding company will then play that role. I will come back, Chair, on some of the questions, but for me, is what is important is the measures that will be put in place, and knowing the history. And I think as the African National Congress, we're not going to shy away on that, because it is the history that is then making us to realize the importance, not that there was never professionalization in terms of recruitment, but as the SOEs were conducting their responsibility, then there was some weaknesses in the process, and I think that is very important for us to look, and very important to what then this presentation is putting in terms of professionalization and the role that is going to be played by the public service and administration in appointing people that are going to be in key strategic positions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dunjwa. Honorable Christie.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much to our presenter for a succinct and concise and very insightful presentation. My question to her is, she talks a lot about ability, appointing directors of SOEs and SAMSOC based on integrity, merit, ability. And especially our national ones, before the early 2000s, they were functioning really well. And I keep bringing up the fact that Eskom was getting international awards for its efficiency and its ability to generate and transmit electricity very cheaply to South Africans. Why, if it was working under this decentralized system of state-owned enterprises reporting into their respective departments, it did work before, why would she think it would be necessary to bring in an entirely new system as proposed by this bill under SAMSOC? People have done an analyses on what SAMSOC would cost our SOEs, and it will be very, very expensive, costing our already overburdened and indebted SOEs millions, if not billions. And as we know, they're on their knees with hundreds of billions of rands of debt. So is it necessary to introduce SAMSOC when our state-owned enterprises were working perfectly well in the early 2000s and before? And does she not believe or think that there could be even further corruption, mismanagement, malfeasance, political interference with a centralized holding company, which could possibly make it even more opaque and close off the governance of state-owned enterprises from the eyes of South Africans? She spoke about professionalization and skills, bringing in the best directors, and I believe we're all on the same page as her on that. And she mentioned that the OECD, 60% of the OECD countries use the centralized state-owned management system. What about the other 40%? And I wonder whether she has comments on why the other 40% are not using a centralized system. So my fundamental question is, does she believe that this very expensive and cumbersome project is necessary, given that these national state-owned enterprises were working perfectly well, efficiently, and without this kind of looting that happened after the early 2000s? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Christie. Honorable Tellers.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you also for the presentation that we've just been put in front of us, and also a very good morning to the fellow members of the committee. I just think that there are certain things, Chair, which cross my mind, which I believe maybe in assessing, it's very important for one to gain comfort on. The first one is I heard mention of that the struggling SOEs to be rehabilitated, so to say. I really want absolute clarity here to say I hope, I mean, in terms of that rehabilitation, I sincerely hope that on the list of those interventions, there isn't anywhere any sign of a bailout, because maybe if there could just be some light thrown on what some of this rehabilitation, what does it mean? Because I think it's very important. Secondly, Chair, I would like to understand, what is the end game of this company? Because companies the world over, there are two scenarios: either it flies or it goes belly up. So I think it would be very, very helpful, because I've heard all about the pros as far as this is concerned, motivations. I haven't heard cons, and there's always the risk profile, and the risk assessment is very, very important. Let's hear about the risk, because it can't just be an upside without a downside, unless I miss something somewhere. I think that is very important. The question also I asked yesterday through NetLec is how much focus, because all these SOEs are at different levels of being debt riddled. To say, I just still, although it was answered yesterday, I'm not yet quite sure how that is going to be handled, because I'm very concerned because these debts piled up due to the frequent huge bailouts. And then maybe, Chair, through you, last but not least, I would like to understand what are the initiatives, that have been put in place to take the communities along, because we are very fortunate to be where we are. We understand we're in line of sight of what is going on. So in terms of these communities who, by the way, have been the heaviest impacted by the horror story of the SOEs in terms of things like jobs and so on and so on. I will pause there, Chair. I would say that sometimes we've asked in other committees as well, should the questions be a lot sometimes, or whatever reason? If please, then sometimes there's always the alternative of answering in writing. I've seen quite a few times some questions, when we ask these questions, we are very serious because we want to understand and to help our oversight duty. So really, if for any reason, it's not good to see some questions falling in the crack. So if time runs out or anything, it's just good that they are answered in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chelezi. Honorable Montana.
Thanks very much, Chair, and good morning to my fellow lawmakers, and of course, a good morning to the colleagues from the Presidency. Chair, I as I was listening to colleagues, I was trying to try and go and process some of this information, and thanks very much for a very informative presentation. For some reason, I agree with the conclusions that the presenter Pulani was making, but I don't agree with the presentation, and it sounds like a contradiction. But I'll explain in a short while. Let me start, of course, by making the point that South Africa is a highly divided society. And you can see that even when we deal with problems, our starting point, our own prejudices, our own stereotypes come into the fold. We start at different periods when we talk about the SOEs. And I think that at some stage, we need to come to a common position, because state-owned enterprises in our country do not start now. If you talk about South Africa before 1910, it was not one country. And for you to bring it, or rather, let me put it bluntly, when we as Africans were excluded and the English and the Afrikaners decided to run the country on their own in 1910, under the auspices, of course, of the British imperial rule. They had to do a lot of things. They created state-owned enterprises, some of them, of course, giving mandates to private sector organizations. If you look at the example of railway companies, and without state-owned enterprises, you wouldn't have brought South Africa, or what you created as South Africa in 1910. Of course, Chief Buthelezi, that came, of course, with the destruction of African kingdoms in the period leading up to that. And if you look at South Africa being connected into one, railways, telecoms, and all of those things played quite a major role. And you go into 1910 itself, when decisions were made, you'll see. And then, of course, some of the state-owned enterprises that we have changed in many different forms and all and types and sizes. Some expanded, if you look, for example, at the time, depending on the development objectives that were set. I mean, if you look at the South African railway and harbors, at some stage they were one thing, and then they were broken down. In the 1980s, when the state faced huge financial fiscal challenges, they were broken down. The Transnet that we have today and the Plaza that we have, actually a direct result of the restructuring of the economy in the late 1980s. This way, Transnet was created in 1992. The act creating Transnet from the old South African transport services. So I think that we need to at some stage do a detailed thing, because we want to start in the last 10 years and come up with this theory that our problems are related to state capture. I respect those who have that view. I don't share that view. And I think that one of the major things that when we talk about state-owned enterprises, inefficiencies and all those kind of things, you will not hear people telling us how the economic services offered by current state-owned enterprises to the private sector. If you do your numbers right, you'll actually see the extent to which private companies have been hugely or grossly subsidized by state-owned enterprises. Some of the things, I like the example given by Honorable Christie when she says, Eskom was working well, and suddenly there's quite a number of problems. And when you go into details and look at what made Eskom work, and you look at the kind of industry structure set up in there, they were primarily created to subsidize the mining sector, the economy as it is. So for me, when I hear somebody talking about recent things and not deal with the real issue, look at the level of, the kind of infrastructure you provide. Honorable Gama is here on the line. He'll probably speak, but they'll tell you, for example, that most of the mining companies that were taking stuff either to Richards Bay or Durban, they were hugely subsidized. Part of the inefficiencies that a train will go to Durban, it will come empty. Some of the slots were not used, there were not penalties, and all of those things. So I think, Chair, the first point I wanted to make is that we need to look at history in the round. This selective thing is not going to help us find the right policy. That is why I agree with the presenter when she makes a very important point, that there are certain critical success factors beyond that this bill alone will not solve. Where I don't agree with her is that she then lists some and she leaves others out. And then this brings me to the point that I want to make in response to this presentation. A model ultimately depends on the assumptions that you make, number one, and two, or now I'm talking at the technical level now. The assumptions that you make and the numbers that you put into that particular model. Okay? So depending on what you do, what you put in that model, because a model, when you make and you try, you change it, or you keep the model but put different assumptions to see and the different numbers to see what it gives to you. That is very important in your formulation of policy. If a model doesn't channel, I mean, the presentation in page 4, for example, talks about it looks at a number of things. But you could see that that's where it creates problems for us. For example, somebody will say, and this links to the point that Honorable Christie made, and I think it's an important point. As South African state-owned enterprises, like Eskom, for example, financially viable or sustainable. Now, when you, for example, take that example, you'll actually see that after you introduce competition, you had the regulator, Eskom uses its assets differently. Some of the assets that are not directly linked, for example, to the production of electricity, are not factored into the tariff structure. Therefore, they're not also factored into the financial position of Eskom. And it affects, for example, even the level of debt that that you can take. We just debated the budget now. A lot of people think the problem we have is debt. The Minister of Finance is trying to address himself to the issue about the debt. And he says, I'm trying to close a gap of 20 billion out of a budget of 6.6 trillion rands over the MTF. So when you look at that, you can see that we are chasing lizards and not dealing with crocodiles. Now, when you change, you punch different in terms of your model, House Pulani, that you've given to us. If you punch different assumptions and numbers, you'll actually see that some of the things that we are doing in terms of policies and legislation, we actually destroy the very basis, the very fabric of our own economy. I mean, if you come and you say, for example, that, and I think that I'll stick to the example of Eskom. If in Eskom, for example, you look at how we've put in how power stations were built linked to coal mining, and you look, for example, at how Eskom had put huge amount of capital on behalf of the state to provide that cheap electricity. Yet, Eskom's primary cost today, if you look at its cash position, the primary cost relates to primary energy, which means that was sunken investment, doesn't recover. Yet companies that use Eskom's capital to sunk the what is called the shafts are beneficiaries. When if we are to calculate and say return on investment, Eskom actually should be a major shareholder in all of these coal mines that are linked to its power stations, and it will actually slash the cost of electricity by half. Is it something that from a policy point of view, Aquino would want to explore? No, our government will not look at that option. The model will not make the assumptions and punch it numbers and say, what does it mean? And give us different policy options available. It's fine if a ruling party says, out of the options, scenarios available, I'm selecting, because they're elected by people. They've got the right to make that decision. But at a technical level, we are duty bound to make sure that we don't go one way. And the problem that South Africa's problem or SOE's problem is primarily living of debt. It's not a scientific point. It's not guided by doing a complete all-round position on a financial position of a particular state-owned enterprise. And what is the level, for example, of debt that it can take over a long period of time in the interest of national development? No. Now we've pushed, for example, we even subsidize the cost of IPPs at the expense of Eskom. We've tied Eskom's one hand and said compete, but we've tied its hands. So I think, Chair, at some stage as lawmakers, when we need, and I think that Honorable Buthelezi he sums it up at the end and says, what is the end game? And getting to that end game, it requires us to consider everything that is in our own national interest. Part of having a state-owned enterprise is ensuring that your national interest and your security of supply is protected. So I think that I wish I could just resign from Parliament and work under Osbulani and say, no, let's make this set of assumptions. And you'll actually see that the critical success factors for you would also come differently. So you've got a model, but don't use it to punch one set of assumptions. And that's where I part ways with the team. So I think it's a good presentation, but I think let's make the point that we've got to look at this in a round, punch the right information, and that's what, when we say we are working at the technical level rather than our choices. So these state-owned enterprises, you are going to touch them, close Komati, you are going to shut the economy down. And I think that we need to be very, very cautious about that. But I support the conclusion, even if I don't support the way in which it's like a maths teacher when you disagree on the method on how to reach an answer, but you come to the same answer. So from the conclusion point of view, I agree with the presentation, but I think the route taken, it doesn't assist on the policy side and doesn't assist us on the legislative side. So I'm asking them that maybe like requested by Honorable Buthelezi, that even if we get some of that information on what models they run with the different, and they share with that on the side or in writing at the later stage, I'd welcome that. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking long.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Montana. Honorable Matiwani.
Greetings, Chair, to the members of the committee, and to the members of the Socio-Economic Impact Assessment Unit. Chair, I think it was Frederick Engels who said that the economic relations of a given society present themselves in the first place as interests. So as we are processing this bill, we should be asking ourselves, in whose interest is this bill being proposed? If you look at the problem statement that is said in this presentation by the assessment unit, the central issue here is poor governance. And then if you look at the rationale for the bill and the solutions to solve the problem that they identified, which is poor governance, they do not speak to each other. Where you want to solve poor governance by centralizing powers to the presidency. How do you solve a problem of a lack of transparency or accountability? By giving the president the sole discretion to appoint and to dismiss a board of directors. So it seems like we are going back to that stage of colonial governors who had unfettered power, or in this case, a neo-colonial governor who wants to centralize everything in the presidency, because we have seen an expansion of the presidency since 2018. I think what is missing here is the actual impact analysis, or the actual socio-economic impact analysis, to give us a picture of the contending interests, the interest that is the developmental objective, which is people orientated, and the commercial objective, which is a bottom line approach or profit orientated. So we want to find out how will that, what would be the socio-economic impact of focusing on a more commercial objective. For example, we are dealing with state-owned enterprises like the post office, like Eskom, that has to distribute electricity. So if Eskom is going to focus more on a commercial objective, what is the cost of that? What is the socio-economic cost of focusing on a commercial interest? Because we must also look at this. I think Honorable Mondana touches on this. The power to define words and what we call things. A state enterprise is not for profit. It has a developmental mandate. And in pursuing its developmental mandate, there will be interventions from the state, because it is not purely pursuing a profit motive. So when we say that the state is giving bailouts, we are giving an impression that these state-owned entities are failing and they need to be bailed out. When in actual fact, they are not failing because their mandate is not to pursue super profits in the first place. So I think even when we say that we are going to professionalize, because the solution that they are coming with, even the unit, I think, is in agreement to say that we will not solve this. We will not solve this issue by the establishment of this holding company. The issues of governance need to professionalize the sector or to professionalize state entities. This can be done without having this holding company. So I don't know what is the rush, because even with the presentation from NEDLEC, what we are not getting is the rationale for us to have this holding company. For whose interest is it to have this holding company? Is it an agenda to privatize these companies, or has it filled into the stereotypes of saying that once things are in government, that government is not efficient, or black administration is failing, so when it is in private hands, it will perform better? That is the power to define. We are just continuing the stereotypes instead of looking into the issues that needs to be fixed. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Matiwan. Honorable members, I want just to caution all of us not to start this process at the tail end. Let's stick to the presentations, because now I've listened to honorable members. They want to get deeper to the issues, and I think we must all agree that there will be a time when at the end we will then discuss the bill on a clause to clause or section to section. Now, honorable members, I will request that we stick to the presentation, not the clauses or not the sections of the bill. And I will request that, honorable members, as you then move to Honorable Bergman. I've seen also after Honorable Bergman, Honorable Ghana will come in, and Honorable Sabrathi will come in, and Honorable Chauke. Please, honorable members, there will be that time when we discuss these clauses on a process called motion of desirability. Then now let's only ask questions to the presentation or comment to the presentations, and don't get tempted of getting deeper to the bill itself. I'm requesting you, honorable members, please. Honorable Bergman.
Chair, thank you very much. And it has been interesting to hear the different comments, although I do agree with you that at this stage, I think we're just listening to the presentations. But I think some comments have been made that I think we do need to need to recognize that both the Nedbank comments and from the the presidency, there are concerns. And I think that in terms of what we're seeing, everyone's talking about legislation, um, and dare I say that in a few years before, where it would, where some of these state-owned entities were profitable. I think it must be said that there is an expectation for state-owned enterprises, specific state-owned enterprises, to be profitable. And they had been profitable in the past, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be profitable in the future. And I think that's the issue, is that are we legislating to create this ideal, or did we have it? And what was the weaknesses that allowed for it to degenerate? So just like the Constitution, where the Constitution was written in a time where I think everyone was hoping for peace and everyone was hoping for reconciliation, and they saw this new opportunity. What the Constitution didn't envisage, and if you look at the Zondo Commission, the weaknesses that had been highlighted was that our very own Constitution, which is one of the most progressive in the world, would not have the teeth to really deal with what was a horrible stain in the last few years in terms of monies that were taken out of the country, state-owned enterprises that were meant to be profitable not turning a profit. And now we are about to legislate again. And again, I say, and I've asked the question during NEDLAC, is that the presidency itself has placed new dare I say, it was an edict from the president, but it's basically given the oversight to the committees on the different entities. And I think it has to be allowed its course to see whether that could run. Now, in terms of using a model, the presidency has backed the China model. Now, we've been fortunate enough, a few of us, to actually go see the China model. Our legislation and our constitution would not allow us to deal with offenders the way that China deals with offenders. And I say that diplomatically. But my friend Honorable Garner asked the question, what happens to board members that are found guilty or found to be wanting? And, the diplomatic answer was always high penalties or the high fines. But there was always the third option that no one spoke about. And I think we got to be very careful about who we benchmark ourselves against. Yeah, I ask the vets why these small dogs go and they go bark at big dogs. And they said the small dog doesn't realize it's a small dog. It thinks it's as big as its counterpart. And I think the lesson there is also that we need to just understand our economy size and where we are in trying to grow our economy. Now, if you look at the presidency's this important presentation that we've just had, there's major concerns that I don't think this legislation can deal with those concerns. So I personally would like to ask the presenter is, are we not legislating and thrusting a model before us that might just be not taking one set of problems and swapping them for another set of problems? Was there not, was in the deliberations and in the submissions, was there not a possibility that they look at keeping the status quo now and trying to then build regulation around what would protect, in essence, the state-owned enterprises? There's two types of state-owned enterprises that we should be concerning ourselves with: that which could be very profitable, and that which provides an important or vital service. And if you look at the regulations, like on water, there's a water board being born pretty much every day, the way I see it. There's always this water board and this water board. And, I don't see much coming in terms of protecting our water source. I just see a lot of boards being built upon another board and board. ESCOM, which should, for all intent purposes, be profitable. I see lots of municipality debts. I see not enough competition. And I ask myself if we don't already have the powers without this legislation for the presidency to actually, in effect, introduce measures to ensure that we're actually on the right path, and that before we legislate, that we give this tenure an opportunity to grow. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bergman. Honorable Ghana.
Thanks very much, Chair, and good morning, and thanks for the presentation. So let me open my input, which I hope it will be less than 2 minutes, by saying that there's evidently there's a different understanding of what the state-owned entity ought to do, how it behaves, and so forth. Because I think also the concept of a developmental state itself needs a serious unpacking, because it seems the understanding of both. What do we mean when we talk about a developmental state? Given where we are, what are the sort of cultures that we need to then have? Why I'm raising this, Chair, is so when I look at the presentation, so the department says that now from there where they are sitting, they've asked for seed capital of around about 615 million. They are hoping that in 3 years' time, the state, the holding company, will now be run from the dividends of the state-owned companies as the ones that will fall under the holding company. And what that communicates is that the state-owned entities themselves, in 3 years' time, they should be able to make a profit. And I'm not so sure what analysis and what I would like to hear from the presidency. It's in arriving at that determination around the financial impact. What did they look at? So I'll just contain my input on that to say, all right, let's be realistic here. The state-owned entities that we are talking about, many of them haven't posted a profit in the number of years. But then the presidency makes this bold claim or this around in terms of the seed capital, to say we are confident that in 3 years' time we will not go back to the National Treasury, to the fiscals, to say capitalize us, give us extra money so that we can continue to run as a holding company. If they could just expand on that particular aspect. So it is, Chair, I'm taking your lead insofar as trying to give or my comments to be based on the presentation. So I'm asking them to then take us into their confidence in terms of their projections. What is it that gives them so much confidence that in 3 years' time, there will be no need for the fiscals to continue funding the holding company? I'll submarine here, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ghana. Thank you very much. Honorable Sabrathi.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, greetings to yourself and to honorable members in the Portfolio Committee, and to fellow South Africans, and to our guests. Chairperson, let me welcome the presentation that we have received this morning. And I think particularly, Chairperson, the recommendation is given with caution that whilst the state-owned enterprise and holding company is a vehicle, but I think we have been cautioned and we are acutely aware that any enterprise that is not sufficiently skilled is an enterprise that will be unfortunately doomed for failure. And I think what's crucially important, it cautions us, we need a cultural change in the country. Now, Chairperson, I have got a few contributions to make, and I will be very, very focused because the kind of sense I got from honorable members on the call is that they're not engaging the content of the presentation, which is what I think we are convened here, but rather the principle of a holding company. And as you rightly pointed out, that would be discussed, when you go to the bill on a clause-by-clause basis. But I think what we hear today is really to receive the presentation and focus on it. And Chairperson, I'm quite happy to share my questions. If, as one of the honorable members has mentioned, if it's not answered here, then I'm quite happy to share the questions for written responses. Chairperson, maybe let me just pick up from where Honorable Ghana had kind of like alluded to by asking that what measures will be taken. So my question will be very focused. As I said, I want to focus on the presentation and talk to the presentation directly rather than wishy-washing and talking about the concept, because what we must understand is one of our greatest challenges has been interoperability between SOEs and us being everywhere. And I think the idea of a holding company seeks to do that exactly. It seeks to centralize our skill, give focus, give direction. I think that is where it's inherently born in addressing these issues of interoperability, addressing the issues of inefficiencies, and really making us far more synergistic. So maybe my question is very focused on the presentation from Honorable Ghana, taking the cue from him, will be what measures will be taken in an instance where the subsidiary SOEs don't generate the required profits to finance the functioning of the holding company? I think that is a very crucial question, because what happens if one of the subsidiaries is not profitable? Another question, Chairperson, would be that should the principles of the bill and the national strategy be limited to companies in the holding company, or should be applicable to all SOEs to ensure that there is strategic alignment in this regard? Further to that question, noting that the national strategy for the holding company will be developed, should the national strategy have parameters, Chairperson, to propose for the establishment of a subsidiary company to focus on an emerging economic sector, or for the purposes or for a purpose identified by the SAMSOC board? Another question, Chairperson, from me would be a focus question would be what measures in the bill link the reporting of the entity to also include various social and development objectives to ensure that SOEs do not only report their commercial businesses, but also measure their social developmental impact beyond assessing them based on profitability. And Chairperson, I'll pause over there. I do see my comrade, my honorable colleague from the ANC, Comrade Honorable Megan, has her hands up, and I think allow her to continue. Safe to say, Chairperson, that I heard the whispers of the bill seeks to privatize. I think these are all misnomers that must be dispelled. The bill in no way seeks to privatize any of our SOEs. Rather, it seeks to strengthen them, entrench them, and address the issues of interoperability, inefficiencies within the SOE sector through a strong, formidable, well-skilled, properly run board of directors. And from that, a holding company will disseminate direction and leadership to the rest of the SOEs under its umbrella. Thank you so much, Chairperson, for this opportunity to engage.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sabrath. Honorable Chauke.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and greetings to honorable members on the platform and also to our presenters, and would like to also welcome those who have tuned in and joined us. Chairperson, I'd like to take an appreciation to the presentation that has been made to us through the presidency, and also just allude to the fact that I've been greatly covered by my colleagues as well in terms of really interrogating the presentation that is put before us. And some of the critical questions to really have a better understanding myself would be really understanding what is the view through the presidency's analysis, and obviously being able to investigate the risks that would come with the implementation of the bill and its various sections, and also the risks that it would have on the various subsidiaries and SOEs, would be how would we be able to distinguish the difference between the commercial and developmental mandate, and perhaps if they can give us the recommendation on that, and what have some of the findings been. And I think Comrade or Honorable Subrathi also alluded to, and I think Honorable Gama also alluded to the fact that it's quite critical for us to really have an understanding of how the holding company will have the ability to generate its own investment for its own sustainability without necessarily having the dependency on the SOEs that will be under the holding company, and how do we seek to mitigate those risks if they do arise. I think also, Chairperson, what we must also analyze is to say how will we be able to have consequence and accountability measures put in place for us to measure not only the economic but also the social impact of the holding company, the SOEs that fall underneath it, and also the bill. And I know you did indicate that we should not go into the discussion with the particular legislation, but is to really have an understanding of what the socio responsibility would be, and how would have the ability to measure that, and perhaps where is that articulated, because we must ensure that as we seek for economic transformation, we seek for economic development through the holding company and through this piece of legislation, there must be a social impact that is also analyzed and measured ultimately. I think, Chairperson, one would also, the second to last, want to find out in terms of the matrix and measuring tool that we then be utilizing, what does that look like? And I know it's over a 3-year period, but beyond the 3-year period, perhaps through the research that has been conducted, is for us to really have an understanding of how do we, not only even as a portfolio committee, but also through the presidency in terms of their recommendation, and also the custodians of this particular, holding company and institution and legislation, put measures in place for us to adequately measure the effectiveness, the performance of the legislation, for us to ensure that we're able to measure the effectiveness and successful implementation, or let me say drive, of these SOEs ultimately, without waiting for them to dissolve or for them to fail. The last part, Chairperson, on my end, and it's quite critical, and we do not necessarily always discuss it, but it's quite a point of discussion in some of the other portfolio committees that I'm part of, to say, ultimately, what is our goal when it comes to ensuring that our state-owned entities must be protected? And this has to be part of the baseline discussion that we are having, even in this portfolio committee of planning, monitoring, and evaluation. And as we undertake the responsibility of really developing and discussing and unpacking this legislation, but also looking at the effectiveness, the relevance of these SOEs, and how to ensure that they are functioning optimally. The discussion should be, how can we ensure that our state-owned entities and institutions and companies must be viable, they must be sustainable, we must ensure that they do not come to a point of collapse. And that becomes our constitutional obligation. And I think that is what we as members of the portfolio committee as well should really be analyzing, or coming from that point of view when we do engage on all matters relating to this particular legislation or this presentation, to say, what are the best interventions that we can then put forward to ensure that our SOEs do not collapse, they do not dissolve, but we find strategies and ways in which we can strengthen their capacity, their capability, and ensure that investment is increased, but also they must become self-sustainable without us moving the direction of privatizing these services. And I think that is quite critical. Chairperson, I'm going to pause there for now and perhaps have an opportunity for a second bite later on. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chauke. I've noted all the hands, but I see a new hand from Honorable Gama. Honorable Gama.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much to us the thoughts around this particular issue. I think an impact assessment is a very important issue in terms of dealing with these kinds of issues. I think to the extent that there has been a qualitative evaluation of potential impacts, the presentation seems to indicate that, but I don't think even the qualitative evaluation goes far enough. There was really no quantitative evaluation other than to indicate to us that 615 million had been requested to set up this particular entity. There has to be quantitative short-term and long-term effects, both positive and negative consequences, so that we at least then, can be brought to comfort that the analysis has looked at all angles in terms of the scope of the particular assessment or the description of the policy that we're looking at. So the other issues that the presentation lacks is to say, who are the stakeholders? How would they be impacted by this? What are their interests or influences and potential impacts? It's gone into the relevant laws and regulations, which I think is appropriate that it does so. And it's also looked at some of the compliance requirements. But it has not looked at what would be the biggest impacts from a state-owned enterprise perspective, given the size of these institutions. What would be the impact on employment? What would be the impact on local businesses, on income distribution in the country, as well as economic growth as a result of putting together the state-owned asset management company and putting under it a whole range of state-owned enterprises? I think there were 13 at last count. And how would that portfolio be managed? What would be the positive outcomes of doing this? I think some of those things to me appear missing, and yet there would be an important aspect of giving us a socio-economic impact assessment. So I would say it does not go far enough in terms of looking at this from all angles. It looks at it from some angles, but sadly, some angles are actually missing. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gama. Colleagues, you have heard question from the honorable members. There's a lot of questions and obvious there are comments, and I will request that if they still, honorable members, they still have questions, they can write those questions to Nomaxhosa, and you will then submit further questions to the team. But however, I will hand over to the team from the unit. I'm not sure, Mamupulani, if you're gonna start, or there are also your colleagues that will help you to respond to the questions raised by members and concerns and clarify some of the issues here. I will also, the department also is here if there are issues to respond to from the by honorable members. I'm handing over here to the team.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, honorable members of Parliament. We really appreciate the questions and the comments that you have put forth. They are really valid and valuable. So if one summarizes all the questions and the comments, honorable members are saying to us that we should go deeper into the history and be able to demonstrate what worked well, what is not working well, and what led to the current status quo, but also use various models and look into how they give us policy options, but also in terms of forecasting also, that if we apply this bill, what is the desired future that this policy proposal will actually yield at the end of the day, but also in terms of how we're going to professionalize our SOEs. And there are also other risks that honorable members have indicated, particularly around the funding model, to say we need some startup funding, but will this holding company be self-sustainable beyond 3 years? And there were other aspects that speaks to enhancing our report to also cover the quantitative evaluation, where we look into forecasting models in terms of short, long term, and the pros and cons looking into the future. And I think those are the issues that engaging with former colleagues from public enterprise, but also the Presidential State Enterprises Council and others to put together the responses to give a comprehensive picture of what happened and what has been the research that has been conducted, and the rationale to come with this legislation. I think we'll go back and prepare also in writing to, or if being invited again to come and present and respond to the questions and the concerns that have been raised. And also I think if we look into the history, it will be also to say what has been the global changes, and whether what happened some years back that made SOEs to perform better, whether that particular approach will still apply given the changing circumstances of the world. So like for now, if you look at Japan, they are investing into freight logistics using underground tunnels. What will be the future given, the changing technology, the AI? Will we still be required to use old traditional way of doing things, given the changes that are happening around the globe? So those are some of the dynamics that we need to look into using forecasting models and others, and the changes that are happening, so that we have also SOEs that will not only be self-sustainable, but are able to, in a streamlined, integrated way, contribute to addressing unemployment and addressing poverty, spatial inequalities, but most of all also ensuring that government is able to deliver the necessary infrastructure that relates to growth, that relates to the demand in the economy, that respond to provision of sustainable basic services, and also in the context of the climate change response. And there are other issues that honorable members have raised that will also be articulated through the proposed strategy that will be developed for the holding company, that will detail the whole implementation. And the good thing also being under the portfolio of planning, monitoring, and evaluation, the expertise around how will this assumption be monitored, whether is it making inroads in relation to the identified challenges. So it's not about having the bill passed, but it has to be followed on its operations, whether it's addressing the initial challenges that were identified. So through you, Chair, if we can be allowed to go and put together all the questions and the concerns that have been raised and respond accordingly. And we will appreciate, but we are really grateful of the questions that are so insightful, and the comments that really helped us to enhance our report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Bulani. Honorable Montana, I see your hand.
Thanks, Chair. And I do accept the conclusion that the presenters made, and that they look at that. Chair, I just want us to, of course, I think that once they've done the work and they come back, but I think that, Chair, we need to clarify the role of this particular presentation. Because if we don't, we're going to have a problem. This specific, we're still going to have the presidency or the Department of Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation as a sponsor of this legislation to come and respond to everything that has been this. But this specific presentation, I think that I'll ask Mepulane that we create an artificial boundary between yourself and the rest of your colleagues who are dealing with this bill. And I'm using that deliberately artificial. Your role in this is not to defend it. Your role in this particular is there someone who's unhappy with me, Chair?
Honorable Tunjwa, can you close your mic? Honorable Tunjwa.
Yes, Chair, I will share.
It's a shop steward, Chair, who address our savings. Chair, just to be brief, because I think we need to get this right. The team presenting from this particular specific unit must tell us about the model and what they've run, what the numbers and all of those things. That's what we want to hear. But I think currently we are conflating. Let them pretend that this bill doesn't come from their department in the presidency, and tell us about impact assessment. That's going to help us, Chair. Or else we're going to have a situation where, in the process, we then conflate the issues. So I think you've given us a good caution, but I think that the caution should go as well to the presenters that they deal with impact, tell us with the technical model and the numbers and the options, and look at all the other things that members have looked at. Their specific role, they may believe in the bill, that it's a right way to go. But their role today, or in their presentation, is to help the committee when it considers the different presentation. We have at our back of our mind the different impacts and the options available to us. So that artificial wall is going to be very important when they present to us, Chair, so that even those who don't support the bill do not feel that we are forced to support it because the presentation says so. Enable us to apply our mind with different kind of information, and the committee at the end will make that final determination. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Montane. Honorable members, the unit will go back and respond to some of the questions that have been raised here, and augmenting to the issues, Honorable Montane, we have added that they must then be able to give us an impact on this type of a model. But obviously, the department will come as well and respond to some of the issues, because maybe some of the questions that have been asked, they're not relevant to the unit, but also relevant to the department. And also there will be a presentation as well, honorable members, that will then be presented here by the legal services. And I think they're part of this meeting. So we'll give them a week, go back and respond to the questions that have been raised, and look at their presentation and come back to the portfolio committee. We'll then invite them again to come back just before we finish our processes of this portfolio committee. But I see there's a hand of Adila Arnold.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honourable members. Yes, just to confirm that the process is usually, once we have concluded our public participation process, the department will be given an opportunity to respond to all the inputs and the questions that have been raised. Insofar as legal services will also respond, Chair, I just want to highlight that my role would be specifically to the legal issues that have been raised. I don't have the expertise, or I will avoid responding to the policy questions. So, for example, the question with regards to the developmental objective versus the commercial objective, that is something that is within the domain of the department. But any legal issues that have been raised, for example, the PFMA question or the Companies Act question, that is where I will come in and hopefully be of assistance to the committee in looking at legal issues or constitutional issues that have been raised by the public. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honourable members.
No, thank you very much, Arnold. Honourable members, I think we've concluded this presentation, and until such time, then the unit will come back and respond on details on issues that have been raised by members of the portfolio committee. And we must separate this process, honourable members. Definitely the department is always part of our meeting, because they must take notes and they must then be able to go and prepare the responses on all these issues. And obvious, I think Arnold have also clarified their responsibility as part of this on issues that have to do with the legal part of this process. But I think, honorable members, we now going to release them. And thank you very much, Ms. Pulani, with your team and obvious all colleagues. Now we'll move to our own last item, the oversight report. But thank you very much to all of you. You are all released and they will remain as members of this portfolio committee just to finalize our draft of oversight report. But anything else, you will be invited to the committee, colleagues. If there are issues that need your attention, you will then be invited. But go and further, prepare your report and respond to all the other issues. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. Thank you.
Nisi, flight the oversight report.
Chairperson?
Honorable Chauke.
Apologies, Chairperson. I just wanted to find out, before we move on to the next item on the agenda, I wanted to find out if we have been allocated a researcher to this portfolio committee and who is our assigned content advisor. The reason why I'm asking this is that it's quite... Yes, go ahead. Sorry, Chairperson. Apologies.
The content advisor has been Nisi, is here.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Chairperson, but the reason why...
We don't have the researcher. We've been told by the House Chair that they are still looking at our... we have written many letters to the House Chair so that they must allocate a researcher to this process, because it's a difficult process, I can tell you, honorable members. But we only have Nisi, who is a content advisor for any issues that have to do with SOEs.
Thank you, Chairperson. If I may again, just to allude to why I'm asking this, it's quite critical for us, Chairperson, and through you, that our content advisor, perhaps as a recommendation, that before we proceed with our meetings, perhaps we be taken through a brief through our content advisors for areas of the portfolio committee to consider and to also prioritize and focus on. That would provide us with better guidance in terms of our interactions as well, being advised and obviously guided by the content advisor and through yourself as well, the Chairperson. So I think it's very important that in the beginning of our sessions, we do have the content advisor present to us on critical areas of focus and areas of discussion, and then we move into the presentation. I just wanted to make that submission. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chauke. I think your issues have been noted, and we will deal with that administratively through the House Chair and obvious the senior manager, having the one working with all the content advisors and researchers. But I know that NISA have been part of this portfolio committee since last year and delegated to deal with all issues of the portfolio committee that have to do with SOEs and obvious the bill itself. But for the researcher, we've been writing many letters, me and myself, we've been writing to the House Chair, and he has promised that the researcher will be then allocated for this portfolio committee. But obvious, the issues of content advisors and researchers cut across many of the portfolio committees. They've got challenges of content advisors, and obvious, they don't have researchers. It's not only this portfolio committee, but and I've been having conversation with the House Chair would then, even a day before yesterday, promise that they will allocate a researcher for this portfolio committee, because our task is very, very difficult, and especially the bill before this portfolio committee is one of those activities of parliament that are very, very difficult. So I will then also communicate again with him, and obvious with Mrs. Giba.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members, and all those who are on the platform. I just wanted to check if the report is showing.
We can see it from this side, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. The draft report is of the Portfolio Committee on Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation oversight visit that has been conducted between 24 and 28 March 2025. And it comprises of an outline of the appropriate context and background information of the oversight, a synopsis on key matters emanating from each visit, and a list of recommendations. I think for the purposes of this meeting, we'll focus on the recommendation. Is it fine, Chair?
Yes, we can see. You can proceed.
Okay. The committee submits on the department, the findings and recommendations on the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, executive attendance of portfolio committee meetings and oversight visits. The committee has become increasingly concerned at the executive's frequent absence at committee briefings and oversight visits. Although written apologies are submitted, the executive's absence often limits discussions. Clarity on policy and other strategic matters can only be responded to by relevant ministers and deputy ministers. Ministers may not be, I'm not too sure, it's not moving from my side.
Yes, it's not moving. And who's sharing this document? Is it you or Nomakos?
No, it's me.
Okay.
It's important to note that legislative oversight of the executive requires cooperation and robust interaction that should ultimately lead to more responsive delivery to South Africans most in need. Proposed reform and governance of state-owned enterprises, the committees agrees that targeted reforms and interventions are required to ensure state-owned enterprises serve South Africans' economic and development needs, which are effectively and sustainably governed. Whilst the committee welcomes the tabling of the National State Enterprise Bill currently before Parliament for its processing, the committee is concerned that legislative proposals are not based on a confirmed and well-considered policy decision. Reforms should be carefully considered and targeted to pursue the country's long-term goals and commitment to reliable service delivery to all South Africans. The revision of national evaluation policy framework and submission to Parliament. The parliamentary delegation was extensively briefed on policy, organizational, and legislative consequences of the intended reforms on state-owned institutions. The committee notes the development of key instruments that are aimed at sound governance and appropriate oversight of state-owned enterprises, which includes the creation of an SOE monitoring framework and the SOE self-assessment tool that would ultimately contribute and culminate into a term strategic plan for state-owned enterprises and a revised national policy framework to include standards for their monitoring and evaluation of SOEs. Once finalized, these frameworks are recommended to be tabled in Parliament for formal discussions. The presidential hotline statistics presented to the committee and observations during the walkabout at CETA and the presidential hotline's back office at Union Building revealed several problem areas that merit urgent attention, including adequate personnel training, sufficient office space and equipment, and efficient integrated information systems. If left unresolved, the presidential hotline will remain ineffective in managing and responding to citizens' complaints and inquiries. The Minister of Communications, together with the Minister of Planning and Evaluation, should submit a detailed action plan with clearly defined timeframes on interventions to be made that will enable the call center to operate optimally and in service of a broader public. Intervention should include standard operation procedures for managing and tracking service delivery complaints, the appropriate training of call center personnel, and proper resourcing of call center to ensure efficient assistance to the public. The report should be tabled to Parliament within 90 days of adopting the National Assembly's report. Statistics South Africa. Resource constraints. Through a reliable national statistics system, the state depends on essential data and information for planning, decision making, and monitoring of social and economic development and any changes. The committee notes with concern that statistics budgetary allocation decreases yearly and is insufficient to finance intervention to ensure the organization's longevity. During its presentation to the committee, State South Africa admitted that ongoing resource constraints impacted the production of reliable statistics on poverty levels in South Africa and left the entity unable to review its master sample per required intervals. This committee implored the National Treasury to ensure that Statistics South Africa's budgetary allocation is augmented with an additional 200 million to implement measures necessary for the entity's long-term sustainability. The leadership and management, the committee notes the atmosphere and productive interaction within management teams and between senior managers at the Statistics South Africa workforce, despite challenges created by impossible resource constraints. Senior managers would clearly articulate how funding constraints have impacted each unit's areas of responsibility, how this could be mitigated and avoided, demonstrated the measures to be taken to reduce the adverse impact. The leadership quality is also evident in the respect and rapport between by senior management and the greater personnel during the committee walkabouts and employee interaction. With Danielle, Danielle's turnaround strategy yield limited results. The committee notes that despite presentation made to the contrary, Danielle is struggling to develop and implement a well-conceptualized turnaround strategy focused on its long-term sustainability. The entity still faces dire liquidity and cash flow challenges, is unable to pay off debt, cannot sell or exploit its non-core assets to raise additional revenue, and is discouraged by the continued loss of skills and capable personnel. The ongoing challenges in completing significant defense procurement projects as Project Office of Easter have proved costly and detrimental to South Africans Defence Force combat readiness and defense capabilities. Urgent intervention is required to resolve the ongoing challenges between Armed Squad Denel and South African Defence Force. Denel is facing significant challenges in safeguarding its intellectual property as it battles to recover the stolen IP worth 328 million. It reported that Special Investigating Unit is actively pursuing legal measures, including engaging with the United Arab Emirates through mutual legal assistance agreement to reclaim Denel's intellectual property on missile development. Safeguarding intellectual property is crucial for national security and Denel's ability to operate effectively. In this regard, a focused plan of action is required to review and strengthen the legal framework, specific security measures, and a strategy to promote IP awareness within the organization. Regular audits to identify and safeguard IP assets should be conducted and reported on. Denel reported a poor credit rating, making securing bank guarantees difficult. The situation will remain unless sustainable progress is made in establishing sound financial practices, debt is reduced, diverse funding sources are identified, and the company manages to rebuild its reputation. Denel should develop an action plan with clear timeframes to establish robust internal controls, properly record keeping, implement and reporting processes, and address irregularities. It should report quarterly to the relevant portfolio committee on resolving key weaknesses. With regards to South African Post Office, whilst the committee appreciates South African Post Office, that South African Post Office requires an outstanding 3.8 billion to complete its business rescue, SAPO lacks a vision and strategy for its sustainability and adaptation, increasingly digitized to an increasingly digitized context. To remain beneficial to the public, SAPO must develop service models catering to urban and rural settings. The post office must also incorporate digital technologies, expand its services to include e-commerce and courier services, and serve as an access point to government while while retaining some of its traditional services. SAPO has an extensive portfolio and property portfolio and risk neglect. The entity should investigate and identify buildings that can be repurposed or sold to generate additional revenue. With regards to South African Airways, the committee is pleased that South African Airways is recovering from its business rescue and has begun to show profit. However, it is noted that the executive management is not corporatized and is currently divided into different sections. The restructuring to ensure the most cost-effective. This requires restructuring to ensure the most cost-effective arrangement. Although the global shortage of new and rental aeroplanes has impacted fleet expansion, SAA has successfully rebuilt its fleet from 6 to 20, including Airbus A320s, A330s, and A343s, since emerging from business rescue in 2021. This expansion is part of a strategic plan to increase seat capacity and contribute to a more profitable and affordable air travel, which has to increase by 150% in the last which has increased by 150% in the last 3 years. To mitigate the impact of delays and late aircraft delays, SAA partnered with Sun Express, a European carrier, to exchange aircraft annually. SAA should provide a detailed report to Parliament on the status of Mango Airlines for consideration by the relevant portfolio committee. This matter remains unresolved and great detail is required. Zimbabwe owes the airline significant money, which the entity has struggled to recover. The relevant ministries require urgent intervention to find an amicable repayment agreement. ESCOM, with regards to ESCOM, municipalities in South Africa owe a substantial amount of money, estimated at over 107 billion, and pose a significant financial risk to the power utility. The Minister of Electricity and Energy, National Treasury, and Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs should urgently intervene to ensure that the debt relief conditions are adhered to reduce existing municipal debt. ESCOM's restructuring requires that the legal framework be reviewed and aligned to unbundling objectives. ESCOM reported that legislative changes are being made to continue the unbundling of ESCOM. The Electricity Regulation Bill was enacted in 2025. Still, new legislation is required to give effect to sections that require establishing a new company and transmission systems operator, SOC. Greater effort is required to improve internal controls and to resolve governance weakness. Once completed, ESCOM should submit its audit recovery program to Parliament for consideration by the relevant portfolio and report on quarterly basis. Brenda is saying this and its management presented well and showed commitment to the mandate. It is clear that the limited budget makes achieving the objective very challenging. It should be noted that building and maintaining a positive reputation is difficult since it's based on subjective perceptions and takes time to cultivate. The committee notes that Brand SA 75 vacancy rate in its management structure is a situation that is, if not remedied, may compromise leadership stability in the organization. The entity should provide a written report on the reasons for such a high vacancy rate and the interventions and timeframes to fill critical vacancies. Thank you, Chair. I think that's the end of the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Nisi. Honorable members, that's the draft oversight report of Gauteng. Any takers, honorable members, from the report? Honorable Gama? One hand, Honorable Gama.
Yes. Thank you very much, Chair. Forgive me. I meant to have given some input in writing, but I never got around to doing that. It's just on the Denel issues. There are two issues that I think we should highlight in the report. The first one is that Denel used to have a 2 billion rand subsidy, for lack of a better word. from the Department of Defense, which seems to have been discontinued in 2019. It seems to be the source of all of its problems. And I think as a committee, what we had wanted to find out was why that subsidy had been discontinued. But the current management could not answer that question. So it's because they say they were not party to it and they're not sure of the processes leading to the discontinuation of that subsidy. Because that 2 billion was almost a guaranteed income for them against work that they would do for the Department of Defense. And I guess they no longer do that work as well. The second issue around Denel is we're not convinced that, and I think I'm putting it differently from how we've captured it in the report. We were not convinced that the management has the wherewithal, whether or not there are vacancies. But from a leadership perspective, I think we're not convinced that the management has the wherewithal to take Denel to where it needs to go to, that it will continue to falter for quite some time. And I think from our oversight role, we just need to flag that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gama. Honorable Darren, Honorable Dunjwa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I haven't been able to do justice to this report. In terms of Rodney's reading of the report, it seems to be pretty complete, and concur with Honorable Gama's comments as well. But I think, if there's anything else I need to add, I'll make a written submission if you don't mind for that. I know that we were asked for it, and I know that I've been late on that, but I will make right on that. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I hope there's no noise. I'm at airport. First, let me appreciate the report. I want to propose humbly, first, Chair, the structuring of the findings and recommendations from person who is from outside. Remember, people read this report will be a bit confusing. I humbly is that we have findings separately under each entity that we visited, and then we have separate recommendations, and so that we are able to match, so that we are able to make a submissions. And that's the recommendation. That's the proposal that I want to make first, because there are issues that have been lost in between. I'll make an example. Just the comrades have spoken about Janelle. I'll make an example also about the SETA. There were positives, there were negatives in our findings, and the issue about Home Affairs, that a person reported the delay of I don't know how many years for her children to get ID. We lifted that matter and we said it must reflect so that we are able to refer that to Home Affairs, but being a matter that is then in our report. So that's what I want to say, Chair. And in because avoiding to rewrite this report. So I think I agree with Comrade Gama in terms of the issues that were raised around Denel. And also the state the state of the just the outlook of the institution. I think that we must also highlight. The other issue that I think we have to highlight here in this report, maybe members will take it very light. We were escorted, and we were escorted by people who, I think that is a separate matter, but it must be highlighted in terms of the security of members of parliament when conducting an oversight. And I think we have to mandate the chair to also speak with the minister of Amapolisa, and also that so that Gauteng be alerted of that situation. That was very scary for me. Maybe I'm too much sensitive, or I'm afraid. Those that I wanted to raise that with that chair, with the issues that have been raised, and members that are going to send the written matters. I want to move humbly the acceptance of the report with the additions and the corrections that are then going to come, and that be circulated to us, that and it will depend on you, Chair, if you feel that we must then come again to just look into those. But I want to move the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Your inputs and obvious the honorable members that will then further write submissions and to enrich the report. And obvious also, we must note, Miss, that we must separate findings and recommendations. Findings and key observations are always separate from the recommendations. But Honorable Dunjwa have then moved for the acceptance of this report, and with amendments and also submissions by honorable members, which is Honorable Bergman and Honorable Gama, and the report will be then posted in the group when it's amended, and also in your emails. Any honorable member that want to second the acceptance of this oversight report? Honorable members.
I second it, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Telezi. Honorable Bergman, is it the legacy hand? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, honorable members. The report has been adopted, and we'll then wait for the further submissions from honorable members, and then we'll then email this report as a final report to members as well. But if there are no further issues, let me thank all of you, honorable members and colleagues, the support staff, the department within us, and everyone else. That's the end of this meeting for today. But next week, we're supposed to meet on Wednesday with the National Treasury. They are not available. They are busy preparing for the debates. But we will then communicate if there's revised changes to the program, honorable members, for next week. And don't forget, there's an email that have been sent to all of you by Noma Xhosa. There's a survey and also the registration of the workshop on Thursday and Friday, and then that overlap on Saturday. please, honorable members, fill that those Lantica survey forms and also the registration form for the workshop. But obvious, we'll still also have to communicate also with the House Chair whether we go for the workshop on Thursday and then join the sitting in the afternoon, or we remain in the workshop for the whole day. But we still have to confirm with the House Chair. But thank you very much, honorable members. If there are changes, we will for next week. We will then communicate in the group of the portfolio committee, and the meeting now is adjourned. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Chair.
Long live the chair.
Sibulele Sihlalo.